The comparative study, cultural context. The three texts we've studied are The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Brooklyn, directed by John Crowley, and Playboy of the Western World by J.M. Synge. So, let's get going. Hey guys, this week we're going to move on and we're going to look over cultural context. So on Friday I got you to look over the short video I made for last week. Have a look at that if you haven't already looked at it. And then today we are going to move on to actual notes. Now I've tried to break it down into different headings and then subheadings within that to make it a little bit easier for you. So hopefully that will make it a little bit more understandable and a little bit easier to learn, because I know some of you, while we've covered cultural context, some of you still don't feel sure about it at all. So with any luck, the charts, because I won't call them mind maps, that I've done last week that we're going to have a look at this week will make everything a little bit more clear and easier for you. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. And right, let's get started. And look, taking these notes actually probably will take about 2 days. So I'm aware that that's absolutely fine, but make sure you get them down. Make sure you put them into your own language. Right, so let's get started. Okay, first things first. This one is the baby mind map. Okay, so this is an overall view of cultural context in each of the three texts. As you can see down the left hand side of the page, the topics we're covering are society and settings, role of men, role of women, social class, religion, marriage, diversity, war and law. Okay, and then across the top of the page, when it's divided, we've got The Great Gatsby in the first column, Playboy in the middle column, and Brooklyn at the end column. So the whole point of this is, when you look at this, it will show you how I've broken down the cultural context areas. So if you go society and settings and look at Gatsby, number 1, we're going to look at the social change in America. Number 2, prohibition. And number 3, we see various different aspects of American society. So we see West Egg, East Egg, New York, Valley of the Ashes, and the Midwest. Then the pink ones, the highlighted pink circles, are your comparisons. So Gatsby is unlike Playboy of the Western World. And then we go into Playboy. So Playboy, the society and settings, it was set in 1907 in Ireland, when Ireland was under British rule. And it's an insular community. So it means that there's no real outsiders. The only outsider within the community turns out to be Christy Mahan. And then similarly, we go into Brooklyn and we look at two cultural contexts. So the two cultural contexts is Ireland in the 1950s and America in the 1950s. Brooklyn, we can argue, is a bridge between the two texts. Okay, because in Gatsby we see America, in Playboy we see Ireland, in Brooklyn we actually see both cultural contexts. So that's society and settings. Role of men and women. The gender roles in Gatsby are clearly defined. It's a patriarchal society, and in that we see 3 types of men: Gatsby, Tom and Nick. Unlike, then we look at Playboy, which is a patriarchal society. Men are in control of the society, yet there's a clear reversal of roles. The women are more powerful in Playboy, so the men are weak. And the 2 men we use as an example who are weak is Christy and Sean. And that's unlike Brooklyn, where the gender roles are clearly defined, yet Brooklyn captures a changing society, and that can be seen in Tony Fiorillo. Okay, role of women. So in Gatsby, the gender roles are clearly defined. We've Daisy, Jordan and Myrtle. It's both similar and unlike Playboy. So Playboy, while it confines to gender roles, that, men lead society, women are actually stronger than the men in Playboy, and the 2 characters I looked at was Peggy and Mike and the Widow Quinn. And then in Brooklyn, we see 2 views of women. We see women in Ireland, who definitely live in a patriarchal society, but then we also get to see women in America and how society is changing and how women do end up having more power in America. So that is the role of women. Next one we go down and we see social class. We see vast differences in social class in The Great Gatsby. We see the old money from the Buchanans and Tom and Daisy. We see new money, which is Gatsby, and then we see no money, which is the Valley of Ashes. So social class, when you're learning that, break it down: old money, new money, no money. That's why you've got your 3 different areas within each. If you can learn those titles, it's going to be so much easier. So, Gatsby is unlike Playboy of the Western World, where all we get to see, the only social class, is impoverished Irish peasant class. And then in Brooklyn, we see 2 views of social class. Social class in Ireland, the differences between the wealthy and the poor, and in America then how everyone is treated differently in America, and social class is becoming less of a thing, but it's still there. Okay, religion in Gatsby is completely absent from the upper class, unlike Playboy of the Western World, where religion and the church and the power of the church play a major part in Playboy of the Western World. And that's similar and unlike Brooklyn, as we see how religion has power in society in Ireland. But then when we get to America, we see how religion has a broader role within society. Marriage. So, Gatsby allows us to question marriage. Daisy and Tom's marriage, we see, and Myrtle and George's, because they're the only 2 marriages we really see in Gatsby, is plagued with adultery and is more done out of convenience. It's similar to Playboy of the Western World, where there is a very negative view of marriage. It is more a marriage of convenience than marriage for love, and we see that with the arranged marriage between Peggy and Mike and Sean Keogh. And then that's both similar and unlike Brooklyn, because marriage, we see a positive view of marriage, a marriage for love mainly, but we also then see how marriage of convenience when Eilish comes home and Jim Farrell and that whole thing there, but we'll go into detail about that in a few minutes. Then we see diversity. So all the characters in Gatsby, there are white and there is no ethnic diversity. However, we see through the character of Tom that racism is present, and we also see that anti-Semitism is present as well, with the way and description of Meyer Wolfsheim. Okay, that is similar to Playboy. All the characters are white and there's no ethnic diversity. It's an insular society. There is no outsiders. They're all local people. And how Christy, who only comes from not too far away, becomes a source of fascination because he's a stranger and an outsider. And then we have Brooklyn, whereas we witness a society that's increasingly diverse. In New York, we see that there's many people of different races. We see that there's people of different ethnic backgrounds. But the thing about New York is, while they are present, they're still very isolated. So Tony and the Fiorello family live within the Italian area. Eilish, when she lives in the boarding house, lives with other Irish people. So there is ethnic diversity, but there's not much mixing of it. And then when Eilish comes back to Ireland, we obviously see that Ireland is still the same. It's basically all white characters. There's no ethnic diversity at all. War then is a defining effect in society in The Great Gatsby. Characters served in World War I. So we see Gatsby and Nick and how they know each other from the war. In Playboy, there's no war, and unlike that, in Brooklyn, we see a post-war society. So Brooklyn is set in the 50s, it's just after World War II, and we see how society is moving forward and changing. And then the law, we see in Gatsby a blatant disregard for the law, especially in how Gatsby made his money. In Playboy, they do not seem concerned with the law at all. The police are almost a running joke. And then in Brooklyn, obviously the law is respected. So, if you learn your headings within each one, okay, so society and settings, social change in America, prohibition, various different aspects of American society, Playboy, Ireland, under British rule, insular community, Brooklyn, we see the 2 contexts acts as a bridge between both, we see both America and Ireland. Then that should be able to help you structure your answers. And especially doing it this way, if you're asked about the role of men and women, then you just focus on those 6 boxes. If you're asked a general question about cultural context, then you could include everything, but I don't think you'll have time for that. So that's why I actually went society, role of men, women, social class, religion. I've done them in the order of how much information you can get out of them. So obviously looking at law at the bottom, there's not much information there. So hopefully learning that and seeing that will help with the breakdown of the question in itself. Hopefully this will make more sense when we look at the more detailed ones, which is in a different video that I'm going to make now. Okay, so that's your baby chart. Let's get going on the main stuff. Okay.